Welcome, everybody. Hello. This is Dan Bannis. With me, as always, is Good Boy.
Hey everyone,
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
doing good. Dan, how you doing?
Good, good. Yeah, so it's been a couple days since our stream, and we promised that we'd do another one to talk a little bit more about the State of the Union and how it went, and what we assumed would be like the aftermath and like what the spin would look like. Because we're honestly, I think, more interested in like the spin and the culture than like the actual content of the State of the Union. So the so it's been very interesting. I actually feel like there's been a bit of a cultural shift since the State of the Union took place, and where for the first month of 2019, it was very clear that like things were not going well for Donald Trump. You know, the president guy, and obviously in November, the Democrats made some pretty substantial gains. Nancy Pelosi seemed to be flexing quite a bit, and it didn't look like Trump could get much done. But since the State of the Union, things have shifted pretty radically. He gave like what was largely considered a pretty gangbuster speech that just what everyone liked, like CBS polls. Do you have any of the polls handy by any chance?
I do. Let me pull
Oh,
it
great.
up for you.
Yeah.
Offhand, I could tell you that they polled about the same that CBS News poll had, and it was 76% approved of that.
Well, I lost you there.
And let me see if I can get that. You know what? I'm gonna have to dig another minute or two. But what I thought was interesting.
Here, I think I got it. I think I got it.
Great. Yeah, pull that up. What I thought was interesting when reading that poll was CNN's like damage control, the fact that he would poll positively.
Right.
It was, CNN was like, just so you know, only Republicans were watching this. Like, I mean, pretty much that's what they were saying. And I thought that was so disingenuous.
Ridiculous.
Like, it's like everyone is fascinated by this president. Love him or hate him, you have your eyes on him, that's for sure.
Yeah. So this is from Gateway Pundit, which is a right-wing source, obviously, but they have links directly to CBS and here's CBS and CNN. Both CBS and CNN had 76% approval ratings, and like CNN and CBS, they're not going to swing conservative. They're not going to swing right at all, and yet what we saw was that just about everyone liked the speech. They liked the content of it, and they agreed with it, which is pretty remarkable. 97% of Republicans approved, 30% of Democrats, 82% of independents. So that's jarring.
How about that? How about that for saying that it was only Republicans watching this speech? Clearly, the big sway comes from independents, not Democrats. Like, it's independents that are really driving that poll number up. So I find that to be kind of counter to what CBS was saying, or excuse me, CNN was saying on air. And they like retracted the poll too, which is, I mean, how?
Wait, CNN retracted the poll?
From what I understand, yeah.
Oh my god.
They're like, it's fake news.
Our own poll at CNN is fake news.
Okay. Yeah, the link I just sent you is from Real Clear Politics, and I would say Real Clear Politics is fairly, even-handed.
They lean a little bit right, but they're a solid source from what I understand, and I work in this space and I know it pretty well. So Real Clear Politics is very they're pretty even-handed. But yeah, I mean, regardless, like CBS, CNN, 72% from CBS, 72% of people approved of Trump's immigration ideas, even, which I was earlier today. I was kind of gauging the YouTube space, which certainly leans right, as a lot of people know, and they some of them were pretty upset about the speech. Actually, I think most people on the right really enjoyed it, but the far right people were really irritated. This one guy in particular, that Devin Stack, he was not happy at all because he felt betrayed by Trump's statement that he wanted more immigration than ever before, because a lot of right-wing people are sick and tired of the immigration. So I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on that at all?
Well, what do you mean? You mean to say that Trump isn't some crazy far-right white nationalist? And he was like, right. And to quote him, "I want more immigration than ever before, just legally, just legally." And it's like, that's honest to God. It's like a man pleading with crazy people. Like, he's just like, look, I want as many people immigrating here, just legally, just like it's not. I'm not a Nazi. Like, everyone just calm the fuck down. Yeah. And
it's just what Bill Clinton would have said in the 90s. It's what Barack Obama would have said.
Oh, it's essentially a Bill Clinton. It's essentially a Bill Clinton State of the Union, to be quite honest with you.
That's exactly right. My complaint was it was probably about 40 minutes too long, but the whole back half was just stuff about just human interest stories that had nothing to do with anything. But otherwise it was a very upbeat speech, and very uniting speech was the theme, which I think people were just dying to hear. But so this stream, though, is about the response to the speech. And so the problem is right now with the Democrats is that themselves into a corner where, who said, or Dave Rubin says often that, like, once you've labeled someone Hitler, you can't ever agree with Hitler, So no matter what he does, it's bad because it's Hitler doing it. So
I've never really
that's a big problem for the Democrats. Yeah,
it's a huge problem, because all he has to do is say something they agree with, and they're in checkmate. Like, all he has to do is say something like, 58% of the new workforce were women, and they have to fucking applaud this guy. They have to. Because either two things: either you don't applaud him and you cross your arms like an asshole, like, oh, that isn't what I'm fighting for. I'm just fighting against this guy. I'm not fighting for anything. Or you stand up and applaud the man that you define as the antithesis of the white heterosexual male patriarchy. What do you do? It's the same thing he did with Elizabeth Warren, to a T. I've never seen this done by a president in this fashion. He basically goes, look, you can take the DNA test, or I'll just keep saying that you're Pocahontas and that you're lying about it. So she either goes, look, I'm not going to capitulate with this guy. We all know I'm a real Native American. And everyone has to go, well, he's going to keep calling you a liar. And then you take it. You do take the DNA test, and you're dancing for him, essentially, A. Yes. And B, you're probably going to show up to be called a liar because you're not what you say you are. And I think a lot of these far left progressives aren't who they say they are. I think they're power hungry. I don't think they're there to liberate anybody.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that too about Elizabeth Warren, because there was recent news about her this week as well, that it was found. Let's bring this up. So the Washington Post criticized. All right, let's bring this up. It's all moving very slowly. Anyway, here we go.
So what's the general?
So it's found that Elizabeth Warren had used She referred to herself as, she listed
For the
herself as a
bar.
Native American in the past for the bar exam.
For the bar
Exactly.
exam, she puts down that she's a Native
Right.
American, plain as day.
So but the interesting thing is, this is the Washington Post, and this was their headline: Elizabeth Warren apologizes for calling herself Native American. So they make it sound like this is an old story, but it's actually a new story. But they didn't note, so people would just skip over this. They're like, oh, okay, so she finally came clean. The reality is, she finally apologized because we learned that she benefited once again from pretending that she was a Native American. So point is, it's just another example of the Washington Post's blatant bias.
Dan, as a writer, let me ask you something. What sort of cognitive dissonance is going on when you're like, hey, how do we kind of soften this blow as much as possible so people can just walk right past this without ever feeling a thing?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what they are doing. They're purposefully burying the lead. So burying the lead is what you would learn in journalism school, and they're doing it intentionally. They're doing it on purpose. Like it's anti-journalism. Like they're purposely doing it wrong. And so that's the world we live in, and that's why people don't like the news anymore. That's why they don't trust them, because they're purposely doing bad news. They're creating misleading stories, and like everyone sees it. It's really a fascinating time to live in. And that's what we saw with the State of the Union.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time to live in as the world is on fire around us. It's like it's a really fascinating time to live in. Journalists lying directly to our faces and burying the lead. It's like what a truly intriguing thing to observe. It's so fucking frightening at times. I can't even.
Yeah,
it's like the Twilight Zone. I mean, the fact that last State of the Union, you had people in this African garb all sitting together, and now this State of the Union, you have all these women in these white pantsuits all sitting together. I gotta be honest with you, for the groups of diversity and all that, they sure like to be quite uniform, and it creeps me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, they certainly do. Very true. So back to on the subject of the State of the Union, and so there was that meme that came out that was actually banned from, I believe, Twitter, or BuzzFeed asked Twitter to ban this meme. Let me see if I can bring it up. That showed all the people that were dressed in white, all the Democrats dressed in white at the State of the Union. BuzzFeed, so people memed it to make it look like they were they put Klan hoods on them, basically, and so they made it look like, hey, here's the Democrats being Klan members again. Now, I didn't find that particularly funny, or I thought it was a little unfair.
I think it's off the mark a little bit. I think it's
a little off the mark, and it's been let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I can't find it, but well, the thing is, it's not effective. People don't believe it. People don't, it doesn't. It's not good rhetoric, because no one really buys that the Democrats, the modern day Democrats, are like Klans people. Obviously, after the Governor Northam debacle in Virginia, that's changed a bit. Where we saw the photos of him dressed either in blackface or as a KKK member. So, what do I know? Maybe I'm wrong. But the point is, like, generally speaking, that rhetoric doesn't really work aside from in fringe circles. But
I did find the
link,
did
happen. Oh, you found it? Oh, great.
Yeah, it's that last, the last one, Media Matters.
Let's bring that up. Good
Lord. This is actually, I gotta say, the photoshopping skills in this person they're outstanding. Could have fooled me. It's like the Democratic Party of old. However, again, I think it's a little off the mark in terms of precise criticism
there we go.
or memeing.
Yeah,
I think in terms of memeing, they're kind of doing it wrong.
It's not like the NPC,
right? Which is so fucking accurate.
Yes. I mean, look, is there racism? Sure. Is there racism on the Democratic Party today?
Just ask Virginia.
Yeah, but it isn't. But their version of racism is not like the old school Klan in general.
No, we're just talking a little blackface in the 80s.
Right.
That's all we're talking about now.
Right. But so that happened, and BuzzFeed tried to get them to get rid of that. They tried to get Twitter to ban it. As of now, I don't know where that stands. What is interesting, though, they had Stacey Abrams, the failed gubernatorial candidate from Georgia, I believe, they had her give the rebuttal. Now, the problem is that she didn't watch the speech. She didn't even watch the State of the Union. And they made that seem like it was like a point of pride. And so to me, though, that is a perfect example of like why the Democrats, as it stands right now, are just destined to fail. Like I used to be like kind of concerned about them and that, they're going to be a real big problem. But as of right now, I don't see how they can win at all. They just seem absurd. The country is rallying behind Trump's policies generally, and the Democrats just are intransigent, and they're like, we refuse to even watch the speech, even if we're giving a rebuttal to it. So it's like, it just feels backwards. It feels, it reminds me of like the redneck hick hillbilly stereotype of just like the person who refuses to live in reality, in the present. They're like, I liked things better before, that's what the Democrats are like these days. So like, I like the old days when we had a black president, It's like, it's very bizarre.
I mean, that's kind of interesting the way you frame that. I would say the thing that stands out the most with me about the Democratic Party is the fact that they've allowed. It was easy to become unified on the left because you just had to stand against something. You had to stand against not what Trump stood for, what they said he stood for. Mm-hmm. They put all this scapegoat attributes on top of him: racism, sexism, homophobia, white supremacy. They put all of that on him. He is not all of that. Okay, he truly isn't, from what I'm gauging, and I could be completely wrong. But every time he does something for women, for minorities, he tends to pat himself on the back pretty hard. So, kind of a pretty weird fucking racist, to be honest with you, or a weird sexist. He's like, wait, don't sit down yet. You're going to like this. And just gives them another applause break. It sounds like that's the most odd sexist I've ever seen in my entire life. Yeah. Gives them the floor and gives them almost literally a stage, like to dance on. That's essentially what they were doing. So kind of a weird sexist in that point. But it's so easy to stand against him, especially when they put all those attributes to him and like a scapegoat want to murder him because of what he then stands for according to the left. But here's the thing. Once people were like, all right, I'll buy it. He's all the evil things you say he is, because it's easy to manipulate people through fear. Yeah. I'm on the blue side of the fence now. Well, now what? I know what we stand against. What do we stand for? And this is where the radical left has pulled the Democratic Party apart. This small minority, 10, 15% at most of the Democratic Party, has this radical socialist, neo-Marxist sort of idea, this intersectionality way of looking at race and religion and sex and gender that they've nationalities. I mean, they've totally torn apart any sort of order that a normal person can cling to. And I think they've dragged them so far to the left that a lot of Democrats are going, look, I may be against all those terrible things, but I'm not for all these radical things either. And you're kind of leaving them in the dust. And I mean, it's no wonder that 80% of independents felt like what Trump was saying was, on the whole, pretty decent. Because at the end of the day, this is a 90s Democrat speaking, because that's what he is.
Mm-hmm. Right. So watching the speech, it became clear, like, the Democrats are not going to get on board. We know that. But it did leave us wondering, like, what are they going to do? How are they going to spin this? And we learned today what their plan is. Despite the fact that, like we said, 76% of Americans who saw the speech, probably a slight majority of those being Republicans, but 82% of independents approved of the speech. 76% of Americans on the whole approved of the speech. 97% of Republicans approved of the speech. That's a huge chunk of America. So the Democrats, if they were reasonable at all right now, they would make a push towards the middle. They'd go back to moderation and kind of a center, back to centrism. But we learned instead today they unveiled their plan, compliments largely of Alexandria-Ocasio Cortez, everyone's favorite Trumpian figure on the left, and the Green New Deal. So that's what they decided that we need, which basically, this is Vox, left-leaning site. So the Green New Deal was based on a report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other on climate change, but I do know that the best way to deal with, like, climate related issues is probably not to start a $1 trillion+ program that ensures jobs for literally every American, includes universal basic income, and aims to end air travel and 9% of vehicles, of current cars off the road in 10 years time. That's the plan.
Yeah. I mean, if this doesn't scream centralized government, socialist controlled economy, I mean, I don't, like, you're living under a rock, or you've never exposed yourself to these ideas. I mean, let's not forget that the New Deal under FDR, if I'm correct with that, the New Deal under FDR was to bring us out of the Great Depression, and what could have been corrected by a free market in about 2 years takes about 10. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, this is the same president, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that interned the Japanese. So I'm kind of cautious about how someone who believes in a centralized economy and government use of force, specifically starting in your wallet, how that can end up as force in other realms of society. To me, I don't make a clear distinction between the two. I think one leads to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
this, like you said, this will start out with, we're just trying to make the earth a better place, but then it's like, but you can't have a car, and you can't travel by plane, and you can't work here, you have to work here. Okay, so now we're a completely planned economy. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's there's no reason to feel good about it, to be honest. It's quite incredible, and it's exactly what people are not asking for. As the GOP Twitter says here, It would cost at least $2 trillion. The plan was to fully decarbonize the economy, whatever that means. It would cost at least $2 trillion. They plan to eliminate fossil fuels completely, eliminating at least 1 million jobs. And the plan, I mean, this is the GOP saying it, so take it with a grain of salt. But I don't think that the Democrats would disagree with this. They plan to cause massive disruption at a global to global trade. That, I mean, they need that. That will certainly happen if this was to go through.
Absolutely.
So they have a set goal of a net zero emissions in 10 years. So it would involve every single public building being renovated and retrofitted, basically completely overhauled to become fully green for whatever exactly that means.
Pelosi, I mean, can you scroll back down?
Yeah.
It said Pelosi says, hold on. Where is it? On
Wednesday it will be one of the
She goes, here it is. Quite frankly, I haven't seen it, but I do know it's enthusiastic, and we welcome all the enthusiasm that's out there. Like, what a way of deflecting that. It's like, well, at least it's enthusiastic. God, doesn't she look like a dictator in that photo? Holy shit!
Yeah, she does.
I just sent you a quick YouTube link. If we could just take a quick gander at that, it's 30 seconds long.
Sure. So the thing is, though, it seems very obvious this has not much at all to do with fighting. Oh, here we go. Let me pull this up. But I say this has very little to do with like any potential climate-related issues that we face, and far more to do with completely restructuring the economy in a much more top-down, centralized fashion. I mean, it seems that just completely clear that that's what we're dealing with. So let's watch FDR here.
Do you have volume on your end? Because I don't. Hey, Dan, do you have volume on your end? Because I don't.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, unfortunate. I do not.
Let me see if I can.
No captions here.
I think the audio is coming through.
Well, for those of you like myself who are having trouble hearing it, it is worthwhile to check this video out. Essentially, FDR says the New Deal may be spoken of by its detractors as socialism or communism, and you must ignore these voices. And in such a Orwellian sort of way, you know, like, don't listen to the man behind the curtain. Mm-hmm. But that's exactly what this is. And the Green New Deal is exactly that. It's exactly that.
Well, they say, there's no. So the idea of it's actually part of it is a economic theory of Malthusianism. Messing that up, but the idea is that you no longer worry about deficit spending at all. That's the idea. That deficit spending is just not even an issue. It's like a modern economic theory, which to me, as you know, as to any libertarian-minded, economics-minded person, that's just absurdity. It's the idea that we should just not even think about deficit spending and just spend forever and print forever, and then just assume that will last forever.
It worked well for the Weimar Republic, so let's see how this goes.
It's insane and it's absurd. It's just far, far left. It's the frustrating thing is it's seems like a very clear backdoor into socialism, but framing it with like these green, touchy-feely green and clean energy ideas. But push comes to shove, it necessitates socialist policies, and that will be nearly impossible to unwind. So that's what the Democrats' response is to, what Trump is offering. And mind you, this isn't like a super pro-Trump podcast or anything like that, not in theory, but I mean, what Trump is selling is way, way more appealing than completely restructuring the economy in a way that is almost certain to fail.
Yeah, I mean, clearly look at the polling numbers. I mean, I would say what he's proposing is far more reasonable and centrist than what the Green New Deal is. Again, this is where liberals are going to be torn apart. You're going to have the radical progressives pulling Democrats towards something, and you hear it in Pelosi. She can't outright say, "Look, this is a crazy plan. We just have a few people in our Congress that are pie in the sky new wave socialists, and they need to come back down to reality and forget that bullshit economic way of thinking." She can't say that, because they're on Team Resist, so they can't criticize each other. Just like every time those women in white stood up, they had to kind of check their surroundings real quick before they stood up. It's all about the group mind. They have to be careful, and they can't really talk each other off the ledge. So you know what? Like lemmings, they're all going to run off of it, because God forbid you push back against Ocasio-Cortez and her Green New Deal. I mean, this is fucking nuts.
It's just and it seems like what would they call it? It's what do they call it? Like when you have a group that like a test screening, like a test group. It seems like A/B testing. That they just went into a room with a bunch of people, like, what words spark happy thoughts in you? Well, green, clean energy, New Deal. It's like, they just took a bunch of things that sound good to people on the left, and then they put them all together. And you can see the Federalists. The Federalists, they're right leaning, but they're again pretty middle of the road.
I'd say they're fairly libertarian, to be honest with
you. They are more libertarian for sure.
They're about restricting government the way the Federalists would have wanted.
That's right. So I like the Federalists. They're not like neocon nonsense at all.
Right.
But so this is they have this great article here. The top 10 most insane requirements of the Green New Deal. They very cheekily had this image of I guess it's a unicorn with an orca whale. It looks like a Lisa Frank design, just to show just how absurd and fantastical this whole idea is. Now, note, Ocasio-Cortez's office has taken down their page describing the Green New Deal. So who knows what's going on with it now.
That sounds like it's a pretty worthy plan. Like, hey, we can't be showing people this plan. We'll just say we have a plan. Just like the Patriot Act was like 800 pages. Like, it was like a novel you had to read over the span of like 3 months.
So we don't know what it. Right, exactly. Which is just bizarre. I mean, it's frustrating because all that nonsense that the Republicans were doing with the Patriot Act and like pushing for more and more federal government military powers, and everyone on the left agreed that was horrible. But on the left, they're doing the same type of nonsense of just like pushing for more and more government intervention, but it's wrapped in fighting the climate and stuff like that. So people on the left all of a sudden are in favor of it. So here are some of the goals. Ban affordable energy. Now, obviously, that's kind of slanted. But regardless, it calls for the elimination of all fossil fuel energy production, which I mean, at the moment, that is the only affordable energy. If we ban fossil fuel energy today, that means that all of our cities will just implode. They'll just
Look
turn
at
to
this. Look at
nothing.
this. Not only all oil, but also natural gas. Natural gas. That's wild.
They would eliminate nuclear energy, which is, I would say, probably the greenest, cleanest energy source that exists right now, ironically. Eliminate 99% of cars. So when I said 96, 97% earlier, I was underselling it. So under the Green New Deal, everyone will need to retrofit their cars with, I don't know, this is just corny, but the authors say that the Green New Deal would replace every combustion engine vehicle. So that's trucks, airplanes, boats, 99% of cars within 10 years. Now, mind you, automatic driving cars, which are supposed to be the future, have stalled out. You can see it right now. They're not happening any nearly as quickly as we were promised, 3, 4, 5 years ago by Google and Apple and all these. Remember all those ideas that we saw, like automatic driving and, clean cars and such? They're not happening.
All the truckers are going to have to worry about their jobs being lost because they're all going to be self-driving and automated, and
right.
That's the number one job for people with just a high school degree.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I'm not we're not Luddites here. Maybe that I can see things head in that direction eventually, but we're not there where we can just end all cars.
Now, I take offense to that because, look, I would actually consider myself a Luddite to some extent.
Okay, I take it back.
I think we, I'm a dog. I like to go outside and play, and I would like to make sure I have a patch of woods to go to, and I think we need time alone to, away from cities and be in nature, all that stuff. However, I'm not about to force people to give up their cars that they bought. If it's up to you to make that choice, just make it fucking affordable.
Right. I mean, who is this going to hurt? Obviously, the people who don't have much means, who can't afford the latest Tesla or, Prius. Like, they're the ones who have, cheaper cars that don't always get the best gas mileage, or older cars. So what? They're all just going to be retired from the road, and who's going to do that? They're going to force them off the road? None of this makes sense. So
now you have to have the Prius police, right? That's essentially the branch of government you just made.
That's a great point. Do you really want your armed your police forces driving electric vehicles? Do you really feel comfortable with that?
I mean, for God's sakes, 160 Chicago police officers are offing themselves every year. The last thing you need is to say to them, by the way, we're going to go around to make sure no one's driving a friggin' Ford.
I know. For a lot of these guys, this is the only joy they have, is driving a cool, slick car.
That's about it. That's all they have left, and we're going to take that from them.
They have hard jobs.
By the way, the same Democrats, by the way, I heard word for word say, Trump says that he's building up the, manufacturing jobs. I'm from Detroit. I haven't seen those jobs, so I think he's lying. So, by the way, if read into Cortez's Green New Deal, do you think they're going to have a Ford plant anymore?
Yeah.
Do you think those jobs are coming back to make combustion engines?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. This would just torpedo Detroit even further. So let's dig further into this. Eliminate air travel. This is literally an element of the plan. They call for high-speed rail at a scale that air travel stops being necessary. That doesn't make any sense.
How am I getting to Europe, man?
How are you going to cross the oceans? Exactly.
Strictly by boat, or we're going to have to smuggle ourselves into Canada so we can fly from Toronto. I mean, this is nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
A government guaranteed job. The bill promises.
Lovely. I can't wait to work for the government.
But what does that have to do with green energy? Nothing. again, that green is just a word that polls well with Democrats, so they make it the Green New Deal. People like FDR, even though he, imprisoned Japanese people in internment camps, and
I mean, clearly this is coming from the same mindset where you treat people like objects and widgets, like you're solving a mathematical equation, and not like human beings with free will. That's what it boils down to. And I think those people are fucking dangerous. And you get the internment camps when you start treating people that way.
Yes.
So I'm sure it's going to start off this way. Then it's going to be like the fucking, that scene in the Von Trapp family. They're gone. They've escaped. They've gone to Toronto to catch an international flight to friggin', Heathrow. It's wild.
So this, I mean, it's important to note, like, we sound sort of crazy right now and extreme and hysterical, but this is insane. Like, when in the past, when Republicans would say the Democrats are all socialists, and people were like, no, that's ridiculous, or they're all communists, and it was always just seemed like nonsense. But this is socialism. It just has a new name.
I just read free money and had a little laugh to myself.
Free money, free education, a government guaranteed job. Like, that is what they're asking for, is a socialist government.
Bonus, ban meat.
Now look at this too. Everything that's on the screen. 1, 2, I guess diet maybe, but a government guaranteed job, free education, a free house, free money. What does any of this have to do with green? Once again, nothing. So it's like, it's just an excuse to reorder the economy, restructure it in a centralized fashion.
Yeah. So my question is, who's going to make these fucking decisions? Who's going to make the decisions of, how much money is it going to take for things to be economically secure? Who's making the decisions of what my house should look like? Who's going to make the decisions of what my job should entail? I don't want you to make those fucking decisions. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's so creepy. So creepy that there's human beings that could that think like, oh yeah, I got my life together enough where I could start calling shots for every person involved in the U.S. economy. Okay.
And so when they're asked how are we going to pay for this, once again, they do acknowledge that it would cost trillions. They do say in the deal as well that it would. They actually say that. I wish I could find it. It might take me a minute there, so I'll just revise and try to create it as concisely as possible. They say that if every billionaire and every corporation pitched in to try to solve these like climate issues, they wouldn't be able to solve it. So that's obviously trillions upon trillions of dollars. So they're saying that the government can? How? It doesn't make sense.
You're people too. And if these people are smart enough to game the system enough to where they can be that hyper successful, they're probably the people they're intelligent enough to have figured this out. Oh, don't give me that privilege bullshit. There's enough privileged people out there. The people that are hyper successful are just smarter than all the other privileged people out there. Let's just say that, right? Even if I'll grant you like, oh, only the privileged are successful. Okay, fine. But the people that are hyper successful have to be the smartest people among that privileged group. Yes. So we're going to start saying that our government, the people that are elected by masses of people, they somehow have the intellectual edge over people that have figured this shit out on their own. I don't know. I don't believe those people should be the one organizing our economy. And every one of these entrepreneurs, every one of these people who have built their way up to the 1%, every one of them has said like, this is dumb. This is not good. #never socialist. Now we are not
From
a Trump,
Breitbart. We were on Vox before,
right, and
so
we are not a
we
Trump
can.
support
It's only
podcast.
fair that we go to Breitbart. But yeah, this
But
is directly from the
that's a
Green
great.
New Deal. The level of investment required is massive. Even if every billionaire and company came together and were willing to pour all the resources at their disposal into this investment, the aggregate value of the investments they could make would not be sufficient.
So what the fuck is that? How you're trying to sell this to me?
This is how
Like,
they're
is
trying
that
to
your
sell
pitch?
it.
Is that your elevator pitch? Just so you
Yes.
know, I feel like we could give everyone free money, free houses, and we might have to ban meat, but this is
And it won't make
financially
a dent.
infeasible. It won't happen.
Right.
And even if we were to take every rich person's money away, we still would be woefully insufficient in order to fund this project.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? Are you in? Is all I gotta know. Are you in?
I mean, if you think about the size of America today, like, I mean, this would be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, centralized government programs in history, in modern history. Certainly one of them. So those don't end well.
Also, even if you're
Ever.
going to take their arguments, their far left progressive arguments for what they are and run with it, it makes no sense. If the United States is only reason we're wealthy and powerful is because of all of our power and privilege and white supremacy and yada yada yada, and that's the only reason we're on top, you're still admitting that we are on top.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if you think that the most egregious supremacist society that has ever existed in the face of the earth, that's how ruthless we are in climbing to the top and how powerful we are. If you said that if we took all the wealthy people, wrung them clean, and we still wouldn't have the money, like, don't you see that might be a problem?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like even if we had earned it, again, in the most vicious way possible, we still don't have the money.
Yeah.
Now, we want to go to a society where people earn things, quote unquote, fairly, i.e., evenly distributed or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
however you see it. But we did things, according to you, unfairly, and we still wouldn't have the cash.
Right. So they say here, too, exactly. They say here, too, the U.S. is 20% of total global emissions. 20%. Now, if we go cut it to zero, 80% of the emissions will still be taking place from China, and India and Africa and every other country. And like, do you honestly think China is going to go along with this at all? No, obviously not. Like, they're just going to take advantage of the fact that we're purposefully putting an anchor around our economy, and then they'll take over. And I mean, goodbye to the U.S.'s economic strength. It'll just be over. So,
well, a lot of economists had said that by the year like 2040, the power dynamic, economically speaking, is going to completely shift in favor of Asia between India and China. I mean, they are going to be the global economic leaders, in like T-minus 20 years, like not too far from now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% convinced that that's true. I can see that certainly there's a lot of wins that way, but China, first of all, is already going in the wrong direction where they are centralizing control. Mm-hmm. And so, things could fall apart there quite easily. There's a lot of volatility.
No, sure. All it takes is for them to roll out a Green New Deal, and that's the end of that.
Right. So
I hope they do. I hope they take this plan and run with it.
Right. Who knows where things are headed, but if this is the direction that we're headed in, it's the wrong one.
Tell you what. Why don't we tell AOC that we want this plan to work? We want this plan to work, but you know what? We need a sign that we've tested the waters. And before we start in a place that's done an okay job, why don't we go to a place that's done a terrible job when it comes to this sort of thing? Why don't we test it on China? And like the white savior complex of the Western world, we'll send AOC over to China, and we'll have them test it out there. and we'll watch the plan completely destroy the Chinese economy. And then bada bing, USA is number one for forevermore.
I mean, heck, I live in the USA, so I wouldn't mind that one bit.
I mean, it works well for me. I just feel bad for, a quarter of the world's population.
Chinese people. Right. So, look, if all these regions are going towards nationalism, hey, I mean, what are you going to do? You can't fight trends necessarily. I mean, you can, but it doesn't seem to be working that well. All I ask, and honestly, I don't have a huge problem with it. It doesn't really, as long as they don't start war, whatever, I don't see what the problem is. But it'd be nice if they went towards like nationalistic countries that didn't have strong federal governments, at least in the United States, because that's what we're supposed to do. So whatever.
Hashtag never socialist.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I've got on it. What do you say? Anything more?
Nah, it just made me, yearn for a meadow to run through. It's the Green New Deal, a terrible, terrible idea. We've played with these ideas before. It's done nothing but slow our economy, open up conversations for government control and restricting liberties. And you know what? We've already played with that enough in the 20th century. Maybe we need to turn the page and we need to go in a different direction. And that's my 2 cents on the Green New Deal.
All right. Well, let's end with once again a little quote from our good friend, the late, great in a way, not in a necessarily good way, but great in like the way that he did great, terrible things, sort of like Voldemort. So let's end with once again our old friend. If I can bring this up.
Oh man, you're leaving me on the edge of my seat here, Dan. Who are we talking about? I just want to point out we are not a right-wing podcast. I just want to.
I know, it's amazing.
Thankfully.
It feels that way. Here he is. You see him?
I do. I don't think I'll be able to hear him, but let's try it.
Let's try it one more time. All right. Some may call it fascism. Some may call it communism. Some may call it socialism. I've never seen that clip from FDR before. Oh, yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that, good boy.
Sure. Maybe we'll include a link in the description. I think it's worth everyone to check
that's a great idea. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. That's the show for tonight. I'm Dan Bannis. Good boy.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.